Everybody, good evening. Happy Wednesday. We are almost halfway through the month. This week's Wellness Wednesday impactful conversation is going to be held with Sphiwe. She is the founder of Social Work with Sphiwe. So tonight we are talking trauma, we are talking Black men, men in general, Black communities, and how we deal with trauma. So I'm just waiting for her to join as we get onto this live, but it's going to be such an interesting conversation, waiting to see how many of us actually understand what trauma is, what living with trauma is, as well as how to help the men in our lives, whether it is our brothers, our fathers, our spouse, our friends, whatever the case may be. It is so important that we understand what trauma is. Welcome everybody who's just joined us. As I said earlier in the conversation, this Wellness Wednesday impactful conversation will be held with Sphiwe, who is the founder of Social Work with Sphiwe, and we're talking trauma in Black communities, trauma within the men in our lives. How do we get the men who are with us, who grow with us, who live with us, to go to seek help after experiencing some sort of trauma? So currently I'm waiting for Sphiwe to join in the live with us, then we'll get going. But you who've already joined us, let's talk about how do you deal with trauma? What do you understand trauma to be while we wait for Sphiwe? Because I think it's such an important conversation to have. I'm going to generalize and say within the Black community, we are so comfortable with as long as it's not physical, it's not pain, or indoda ayikhali, and those sort of things, and we hide and sweep things under the rug. But these things later on cause emotional trauma to some of us. When you're building relationships with a spouse, or you have kids and you need to deal with certain situations, how you were taught to deal with trauma or traumatic experience growing up then moves over to how you deal with it in your adult life. And your adult life is a long time because you're meeting people with different traumas, trying to connect and trying to work together and understand, or whatever the case may be. So tonight's conversation about dealing with trauma is very, very important. So I see Sphiwe's joined the live. Let me see if I can invite her to come up with me because she hasn't requested. Then we can just get going. Hey, let's see if she can see the invite. There we go.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Can you guys see me?
I can see and hear you. We've already got questions and comments. So I'm going to just start with them before we get into who you are and all of that. So Ritalin said trauma is pain that one suffers emotionally, which one continues to re-experience because you did not deal with it. Mm-hmm. That is so true. And in the beginning, as I was making your introduction, I was saying it's very prevalent in the Black community. I don't want to speak for other communities because I don't have a lived experience of the white or the Indian community. But it's so true. We don't, in the Black communities, you don't deal with it. You just
Yes.
And then
Definitely.
Oli Chiba, please forgive me if I mispronounce your handle, says any unusual events that cause deep pain, which is difficult to deal with on a day-to-day basis. That is so true. Absolutely, absolutely true. Okay, so for those who just joined us, let me just start the introductions again. Tonight, Wednesday impactful conversations. Yes, it's a mouthful, but you've got to get it right all the time. We're joined by Sphiwe, who's a social worker, founder of Social Work with Sphiwe. And tonight, we're talking specifically trauma. Because she's a little bit under the weather, so we're just going to stick with understanding trauma, and then I'm going to book up another session and we're going to go delve it deeper with the second part of the topic I wanted to go into. But tonight, in terms of trauma, we want to discuss how to deal with trauma, how to recognize trauma, what trauma is, how do I help my brother, my husband, my father, or cousin, or whatever the system may be, to deal with trauma. But before we go into the nice things, let's start with who you are, what you do, what you're passionate about, and then let's get moving. Okay?
Okay. So I'm really apologetic, guys. My voice has been acting up, but I really hope that you guys can hear me properly. So my name is Sphiwe Mashiane, and I am a social worker by profession. I am also a master's candidate in the field of social development. My policy,
No,
yeah.
no, wait. You must let it sing so that we can hear what we can saying. You're here for the thing.
Right. So, my passions include mental health and policy making and youth development. So that's where you'll find me. Part of the reason why I do a master's in social development is because I always ask myself who came up with the policy, why did they come up with it, how did the representation look like when this policy, was formed. And the one thing about policy is that it informs practice. So I've been at the grassroots level as a student, and I just decided perhaps let's go up there, let's see what's happening, let's challenge what's happening up there. So that's part of the reason why I do what I do. And yeah, in a nutshell, that's me.
Okay, so I'll just clarify my introduction when I write your bio. Master's candidate, okay? Like, hey, she's not just here to play, guys. And Miss Friday is like hyping you, saying, we hear you loud and clear. Okay,
Miss
let's do
Friday, here for it. It's here for it.
this. We're here for it. Don't worry. Now, let's
You
get
guys.
to the reason you're here. What is trauma?
Okay, so maybe just to put it simply, trauma is a response, right? So it's your emotional, your psychological, sometimes your physical response to an event that happened, which was like perhaps harmful to either your body, your mind, or I don't know, spiritually, whatever it might be. So it's a response to that, to whatever event which was harmful to an aspect of your well-being.
Okay, so how do I then recognize that what I'm going through is trauma?
Is trauma, or it comes from trauma. So I always say to people that sometimes you will pick up patterns in your thinking. So usually in spaces where someone has experienced trauma, this will come and revisit your mind. It can manifest itself in the form of dreams where you relive the experience. Sometimes you can do what we call daydreaming. So it's like you daydream and you see what happened. So it'll occupy your mind. And I think that's a good place to start. When you see something occupying your mind over and over again, over long periods of time. But sometimes simple things like, let's say you were in a car accident, right? And then now you find yourself, whenever someone else is driving, it's like you sort of driving with them. You're already like holding on to seats, or trying to just control the vehicle. So when you revisit spaces where the trauma happens, it's like you can't function normally. So that's also another method in which you can identify trauma. But sometimes the people in our lives contribute to, because sometimes we push it to the back, you suppress it, you pretend it doesn't exist. So also listening to people that live around you, and they say, Chomi, every time you're around a man, you acting funny, or you become very defensive whenever you're around a man. Perhaps this could be because you were raped at a certain age, and this forth. Or Chomi, maybe your relationships just don't work out. So sometimes it is difficult to identify a picture that you're in, and that's why we need people on the outside who mirror us and show us blind spots that we might have.
Okay, so I'm just going to go into that one where you are in a situation and maybe you were sexually abused as a child and you don't remember that.
Mm.
But certain things like for example, I don't like being touched. Like, don't do that. Don't come up to me and touch me, that sort of thing. And someone will say, yeah, but what happened to you? Why don't you like that? How do we then differentiate, hore, maybe this is just, for me, it's a boundary. Hore, don't touch me. Let us get to know each other first before you invade my personal space, versus this is a trauma that I need to deal with.
Sure. Okay, so now thank you for the question. So now you're taking us to the importance of spending time with self. You know, when you spend time with yourself and you listen to your thoughts, because you're right, it could be a boundary, it could be don't touch me, it doesn't stem from nowhere. And that's why sometimes we really um discourage people from self-diagnosis, because you will Google and Google will tell you that it's trauma and you were raped as a child, only to find that you had the most beautiful childhood, you were in a safe environment. And I think for me, as a mental health practitioner, obviously I'm a social worker and I'm not specialized yet, so we do not actually diagnose. So the best place to go to see a clinical psychologist who are even able to perform tasks such as hypnosis, which can transport you or take you to that place so that you can relive that event. So really it's about seeking help and avoiding self-diagnosis, because hey, sometimes we can take it too far. We can just, take it way too far when it's just a boundary and it's really not that deep actually.
Yes, because I think that's one of the things that, um, during conversations, that's one of the things that always comes up. How do you know the difference? And I think also because we watch a lot of American TV and PTSD and all those things come into play, is there a difference between post-traumatic stress, the term, and trauma? Or are they the same thing and we're just differentiating them because we watch too much TV?
So in a way, they sort of interlink, right? So PTSD is a specific type of trauma. So in a way, they do interlink. But as you're speaking about, us watching TV, I always say to people, we like to play around with our mental health, our senility, because when your leg is broken, you don't try and fix it and diagnose it yourself and press the bones even further, right? Because you know that you are not trained for that. You know that you need to see a doctor, or what do they call, a radiographer, who's going to, see what's happening with your bones and all of that. But it's almost as if when it comes to our mental health, now we think, we don't need a specialist, we've got this. And that can create more harm than good. So I always say to people, think of your mental health as you think of your physical health. Right now, I have flu. I went to the doctor. I got my shots and all of that, because I understand that, I need someone who has studied, who is professional, who is accountable to a board of ethics, and who has my best interest at heart. And I think that's also something that I want to put out there to people, that your mental health practitioner has your best interest at heart. We don't harm people, so we always try to do what is good for you and what is best for you. So please, guys, go see your mental health practitioner. Don't play doctor with yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now we can't Google the answers. How do I know that, okay, I've realized, okay, something's wrong. I can show what's happening. How do I know that now it's time to seek professional help?
Thank you for the question, Asnyeleti. I always say that the moment it prevents you from living your life to the fullest, the moment you cannot be in a room with men but you coexist with men, because not all men are going to disappear because you were raped, right? The moment it occupies your thoughts and you can't even think of any, perhaps because I'm still a student, you can't even work on your academic things because it's occupying so much of your life that it's preventing you from living your life from the to the fullest potential. That's when you know when to seek help. That's when you know that something is up, because now all of a sudden I can't, I'd rather walk to the mall than drive, and the mall is so far, but you'd rather take that umbrella and walk because you were in a car accident. You'd rather stay in the house because, I don't know, maybe you got struck by lightning, something traumatic happened to you. You'd rather not have kids because it's not a safe world, because the people who are supposed to protect you as a child are the ones that ended up hurting you. So the moment it hinders an aspect of your life and prevents you from living your life to the fullest and the way that you would want to, that's when you go and you seek help.
Now let's move to Black communities. I don't want to single out just the Blacks. It's just, for me, it's a lived experience. And in the way in which, for example, my dad interacts with my brother. Why do we not, we've got a lot of male social workers, but we don't have enough men seeking help from social workers. What is the disconnect?
Thank you for the question, because as I was doing the series on men and mental health, I learned a lot because I'm a woman, right? And obviously I don't know the lived experiences of men. So that series within itself, it took me out of my comfort zone and made me, interact so much with men. But I think the disconnect, or rather, perhaps let's look at the culture. As Africans, we have culture, and there are certain expectations that come, with being Black and being African. So one of the people that I was talking to, they were telling me about this, this aspect of being a provider and always having to have things like in line and in order, and it's almost like you are this god, who just cannot fall apart, who just cannot make any mistakes. So also, but I just want to bring it to practicality. When you look at the disconnect between a social worker who's a male and a male client seeking help from that person, men do not even feel safe around themselves as a collective, as a group. They try to talk to their friends, they try to reach out, they try to say, hey guys, I'm going through this, and it turns into a joke and they are ridiculed. So you cannot expect them to then, if I don't feel safe with my best friend who is laughing at me because perhaps I'm brokenhearted, I'm going through the most, and like weak in Jayam Yabo and all of that, so that also creates a thingy, disconnect between men and even male practitioners. So just because we have male practitioners who are social workers or who are mental health practitioners, it doesn't necessarily mean that men will seek help, because even within and amongst themselves, they do not feel safe.
Yes. Nai_Serepa. I'm not quite sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Please correct the system. Says, also take into account the roles that societal norms play, specifically on a man as an individual.
Sure.
Do we as a society put pressure on men when they are young, therefore creating trauma that goes into their adulthood?
To a certain degree. I think sometimes men find themselves having to grow up and take up fatherhood roles that are ascribed to them. It's like they don't even enjoy the moment the father leaves or the father passes away. It's like now they must, baqine. And you even hear it in the names that they have, Wopegumuzi, or you can hear that already. It's a name that has a responsibility attached to it, a responsibility. And especially in cultures where females are considered as less than, then it doesn't matter what age you are. As a man, you are groomed to grow up and take over because your mom cannot, run the household, So there's also that in childhood where where men are just forced to grow up so quickly, So, but it actually depends. There are multiple factors that play a role. The background where you live, the socio-economic background also plays a role in the trauma that you might accumulate growing up as a man.
So, because I didn't, the naming thing, there was something I didn't see as something that can put unnecessary pressure on them. But I think the other thing I wanted to find out is obviously now we've delved into my father leaves, I'm the head of the household now. Do parents then create an environment that breeds for trauma because a spouse is no longer there or it for whatever reason, and now the son must take up the rightful role?
Yeah.
Do grandmothers, are they
Mm.
also responsible for this trauma?
No, definitely. I'm going to just use a simple example of how, sometimes we'll see clients who their wives and their mothers don't get along, because
Mm.
now it's almost as if this person who I had maybe unconsciously turned into my husband, and has been been the head of the household, and now you want to come and take my son away. So these are the cases that we deal with, where you clearly see that actually it was an expectation on this young boy or young man to lead the household and to take care of the siblings, and to sort of I don't know, sometimes the expectations, maybe you must take your siblings to school and stuff like that. And these, you actually see them whenever there's like a female now in the picture. That's when you see that there's that sort of tug between the mother and the female, because these roles of fatherhood or leadership, or I don't know, head of the household, had been ascribed to the person.
That's so powerful because there was something else I never thought of. Because you're standing in the place of your father.
Mm,
Now I come in, I'm like, hey babe, we're not gonna send $1,000 home. Stop. All of a sudden, then the conversation turns, and the mother's like, oh my God, here she is, the witch from hell, coming to take my son.
yeah.
How do we then detach? So if, for example, my brother gets married,
Okay.
how do I then detach to say, this is my brother, that's his wife. My job is to be his sister. I can no longer involve myself in their affairs.
Sure. The best place to start is being honest with yourself, to say I am
Mm.
attached to my brother, because sometimes we live in this delusion where you don't even see that you're attached to your brother. You think that's how things are, and that's how things should be, and there's this sort of entitlement, to say, yeah, but he's my brother, he's my blood, and this person, I don't even know where she's coming from, and all of that. So it comes with an honesty to really look at your relationship and say, I am attached to my brother, right? So that's the first place to start, to say, I have this attachment. It could be problematic now that there's a woman in the picture. But also, just to, if someone is your brother, I always say, then don't you trust their decision? It seems as if we trust our brothers until it's time for them to choose a wife. It's like you trusted them to pay your school fees, you trusted them to buy you clothes, you trusted them to feed the family, but this one decision of choosing a life partner, all of a sudden you do not trust them, right? Which is crazy. So practically, oh, okay, I'm still here. Practically, it's about acknowledging where you are, acknowledging and seeing. And sometimes I did state when we started that you need people to point those things out. You need that friend who's going to say, "Ah, watch me. Why are you always angry at your sister-in-law unnecessarily?" And you need to be
Mm.
receptive to hear these things. Like I said, that it's difficult to see a picture that you are in. You need people from the outside who will mirror and show you your blind spots.
Yeah, and then so Nai also said, Nai underscore Serepa said, masculinity can actually be imposed on men. Even parenting can play a role, which is so true. I mean, from what you're saying, is a lot of it we don't see. We we just go with it because it's the norm. It's how my father was raised. It's how my brother was raised. It's how I'm gonna raise my kid.
Yeah.
Then how do we? Okay, so now I'm 30. I'm married. I'm going to have a son. How do I then say to my son, for example, I'm teaching him healthy habits? What are the things I need to start implementing? Actually, not even when you're married, before you get married, what are the things you need to start implementing to build healthy relationships going forward?
Mm. I think perhaps you need to start from a point of questioning what it is that you know and what it is that you need to unlearn. Because in order for us to start teaching something that is new, we need to unlearn. We need to question, why is it that, the boy child was treated like this? I know in my family personally, whenever we have umcimbi and all of that, I refuse to wash the dishes while the men sit outside. And that's where I start for myself. So it means even with my son, I will instill the value of go wash the dishes because you also ate. So I'm just that girl, and I always get a tag for it. But I refuse to go serve people my age and kneel down. I'm like, hey guys, ready, come. I've already cooked. I'm not going to serve, and all of that. So also challenging these narratives that we see in our family. It doesn't start the moment you give birth to a son, because some people are going to give birth in 30 years time, in 20 years time, in 15 years time, and all of that. It starts with the now. How does it look in your family? How does it look with your baby cousins? What is it that we are seeing them, perhaps they see it on TV, perhaps their fathers have told them. Why aren't we challenging those narratives within our families? I always say it starts at home. Before we can build a community, we need to build a home, right? So start within the home, question those narratives and those roles that are attached to male and female, and really just go deep, perhaps. And guys, you will get that that backlash. Trust me, you will get it. I get it. But it's worth it when we look at for future generations. I always say with my godchild, at the moment she's 3, and I always say that I refuse that me being educated and conscientized of gender roles and some of the things that discriminate against women and men too. And I say I refuse that in the next 10 years she will live that experience of having to go serve a cousin her age, or having to go I don't know, kneel down and all of that. And but we also need to be conscious of culture, and some people do choose to keep culture yabo, and that's also acceptable, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so important, understanding that part of what do I do and what I don't do. So you and I are exactly alike. My family calls me the blunt one. My dad's side of the family knows if I don't want to do something, it doesn't matter how you scream or shout at me, I will not do it. And for them, it was such a disrespectful thing because, girl, how dare I put down roots? And I'm like, but your son taught me to fight for myself. So
Mm,
technically, you're to blame because he taught me that I must stand up for myself. So I do align in terms of even some of the comments that are coming, that it all starts in the home setting and that sort of thing. So
mm.
because I can hear your voice is starting to show us place, I'm gonna go into maybe the last few questions so that we can give your voice a bit of a rest.
Okay, no, that's
So
fine.
yes, so we've decided that I want to deal with it. How do we then, as women, support the change? Because it is going to be difficult for us when the roles are changing.
Okay, no, maybe elaborate. What are we supporting now?
So
What do
he's
you
saying,
think?
look, I've seen this trauma, I'm going to seek help. And
Mm,
then he comes back and certain things I actually don't feel like doing. It's the things that were imposed on me. Can we
mm,
come back and see how we can work together going forward?
sure.
How do we support the movement, the change?
Mm. So one of the things that I, even with every video that I post, Nyeleti, I always say listen. And when I say listen, I speak of an active listening. And usually when I work with parents, I always say, listening cannot happen concurrently with skim sam playing in the background. And it's funny and it's a joke, but for real, kamo it's skim sam, they're rapping, kamo you when you actively listen, it means I read your body language. I see your facial expression, and more than anything, I hear your heart. So I think perhaps as a woman, or a sister or a friend, the first point is to listen what it is that has changed, and it's such a great thing when men open up, right? I don't know if maybe other people share the same sentiments, but it's so beautiful when they open up. But also it's about preparing ourselves to listen when they do open up, because sometimes it's like, you're not even emotional, you don't even want to talk. You don't even talk, and then when a person talks, you don't even know how to receive it. Now all of a sudden, you are experiencing discomfort because you're not used to it, and you were raised that a man doesn't cry. Now he's crying, and now you're just like, yo, what now, right? So we listen, and we become receptive to what it is that we hear. Sometimes we may not have the capacity to deal with what it is that we hear, and it's okay. It's okay to say, I don't have the capacity, I don't have the answers now. I'll get back to you. And I heard what you said, but I don't know how it is that we can change our lives. It's okay, guys. And I think sometimes perhaps the pressure is that we want to respond immediately, and you want to have all the answers. Even me as a social worker, I sometimes don't have the answers. I sometimes say to my clients, you know what, I have to read up on this a bit more. I have to gain a better understanding of this. I have to do research on this. Perhaps ask other men, listen to what men of different ages, ethnicities, and different diversities say. So it's okay to say to your partner or to your friend or to your brother, to say, I hear what it is that you're saying. I hear, and I hear your heart, I see the emotions, but at the moment I don't have the capacity nor the answer. I will get back to you. And it is then on you to say afterwards, get back to the person. You said you'll get back to them. Get back to them. Read up more if you have to read up more. I know the simplest thing to do is to sometimes, perhaps, let's say they tell you that, I just realized that I have anxiety. Go read up on anxiety and be like, hey, so I read up on anxiety and I saw that, sometimes you lose your breath. Does that happen to you? That's a point of starting. When we want to be in people's lives and be actively involved in their lives, we can read up on the issues that they face. And now we are not professionals. We're not going to say, yeah, hey, when I anxiety, sometimes you sweat a little. No, no, you're going to ask and inquire to say, I did this reading up. Is this how it looks for you? Then that also helps with the rapport, because then they can come to you and say, no, actually, my anxiety doesn't manifest itself that way. It looks this and that and that way. So yeah.
So cool, because I know one of my cousins, she struggles with anxiety, and every time we talk about it, she'll always say, I always feel like it sounds different to me, because she's like, oh no, I'm anxious when this happens, I'm anxious when that happens. And the other time she said to me, look, thank you for listening. I can tell you don't understand, but thank you for listening. And I think only today, based on what you were saying, do I actually understand that active listening, it plays a bigger role than me going, yeah, my girlfriend, I Googled anxiety and I know so and so on the internet said they suffered, so your symptoms are not like this. So I don't think you're going through anxiety. Maybe you're going through something else. And then we're going through different emotions. Okay. So let's close it and wrap it in a bow for everybody to sort of clarify. What is the one takeaway if they miss this entire life and only go straight to the end, or they join the middle and they miss the stuff in the beginning? What is the one thing when it comes to dealing with trauma that you think is most important and needs to be repeated at the end so that they get it?
Okay, no, thank you. The one important thing is to identify that you have trauma, because if you don't identify it, you will not seek help. So it's about spending time with yourself, asking yourself questions, questioning yourself. It's so important to question yourself, guys, to say, why is this occupying my mind? Why is this hindering me from living my best life? Why do I dream about this? Why does it give me panic attacks? Because those are also some of the issues. Why does it give me panic attacks? Why does it scare me? So spend time with yourself and identify where you are. It might not be trauma, it might be something else, but it's always good to know where you are so that you can seek help, or at least be truthful with where you are, so that you know yourself. So know yourself.
And take yourself out on dates, guys. Spend your money on yourself.
Please.
Don't let the people on the internet, on the gram, on the Twitter streets tell you Going on solo dates is stupid. No, no. Go on solo dates. Can you hear the social worker who's a master's candidate just said, date yourself first? Okay.
Yes,
Date
and be
yourself.
comfortable with your thoughts. Be comfortable with your thoughts. Some of us are sometimes so scared of our thoughts that we always need to be around people, and there always needs to be loud music playing or a TV in the background, or something just needs to be loud because you're also afraid of what it is you might hear if you were to listen to yourself. So listen to yourself, guys.
Yes, listen to yourself. Okay, we're gonna close this session here tonight. There's so much more that I want to ask, and I can tell there's so much more we can be engaging in, but the social worker who's a master's candidate is not feeling well today, so we're gonna stop for tonight. And then I'm putting it live. I'm definitely gonna schedule another session with you because there's definitely, I think, so much more to it that we can unpack. And my parting shot comes from Oli Chipa, who says self-care is very important. That's it. We're done for tonight. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you, Sphiwe, for joining us. Thank you to everybody who engaged, who asked questions, who showed her love, and all these other amazing things. I absolutely appreciate your time. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Wednesday evening further. Catch this live just now as I posted. Okay. Good night.